You did everything right, and yet something still isn't working. You're disciplined, in shape, financially stable, respected. On paper, you are the man society promised women would want. So why does desire stop at politeness? There's a quiet frustration spreading among successful men. Not loud rage, not bitterness, just confusion. Dates go well, but never deep. Messages get replies, but no urgency. Interest exists, but it never turns into pursuit. And then there's him. The man with no impressive resume, no curated lifestyle, no visible value. Yet women orbit him, text him first, fight for his attention. This isn't coincidence, and it isn't luck. It's a paradox, one that exposes a lie most men have built their lives around. Men are taught to think in straight lines. Do X, get Y. Work harder, become valuable, be desired. This logic works in careers. It works in fitness. It works in business. But attraction does not obey linear systems. Attraction is not a reward for effort. It's a response to state. And the moment you don't understand that distinction, you begin to repel the very thing you're trying to earn. Rejection at least gives you feedback, but indifference, that's existential. It makes you question your worth, your identity, your entire trajectory. Because if success doesn't translate into desire, what was all of this for? This is where many men spiral. They double down, optimize harder, add more credentials. But every added layer becomes another performance, another attempt to convince. And attraction cannot be convinced. Picture this. Two men sit across from the same woman on different nights. The first arrives early, well-dressed, polite, prepared. He listens intently, nods, asks the right questions. He wants her to like him. The second arrives relaxed, not careless, just unbothered. He's present, but not invested in outcome. He isn't auditioning. He enjoys the conversation the way one enjoys music, not because it leads somewhere, but because it is. One leaves with a polite hug, the other leaves an imprint. Same woman, different response. Why? Women are not responding to your achievements. They're responding to what your nervous system is broadcasting before words land, before accomplishments surface. There is an internal climate you bring into every interaction, calm or restless, centered or reaching, complete or quietly asking to be chosen. This internal state speaks louder than any resume ever could. And here's the brutal truth. Many successful men are internally unstable, not outwardly, not obviously, but subtly. Their confidence depends on results. Their worth depends on approval. Their peace depends on outcomes. And dependence is felt instantly. Attraction does not rise toward achievement, it flows toward self-possession. Why this is so hard to accept? Because it means success didn't fail you. It means success was never meant to do this job. You were told that if you became impressive enough, desire would follow. But desire doesn't follow effort. It follows grounded presence. And the men who never learned this mistake, calmness for apathy, and hunger for passion. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. You start noticing how often you're trying to be enough, how often you're performing value instead of embodying it, how often your achievements are compensating for an internal absence. And that realization is dangerous, because it leads to the next question. If attraction isn't about what you've built, then what are women actually scanning for the moment they meet you? That answer lives beneath behavior, beneath language, beneath logic, and that's where we're going next. Every man was handed a blueprint. Follow it, they said, and attraction will arrive. From the time you were young, the message was subtle but relentless. Improve yourself, build value, accumulate proof, muscles, money, confidence, status. From the time you were young, the message was subtle but relentless. Improve yourself. Attraction, you were told, is a transaction, a checklist. Complete enough boxes, and desire unlocks. But here's the problem no one warned you about. The moment you try to earn attraction, you step out of the position that creates it. A checklist mindset always carries an unspoken question: is this enough? And that question leaks. It leaks through your posture, your pacing, your tone. It turns curiosity into evaluation, conversation into performance. Instead of being present, you're monitoring. Instead of connecting, you're calculating. Women feel this instantly, not consciously, but viscerally, not as dislike, as pressure. Here's a psychological truth most men never hear. The human nervous system adapts fast. What impresses once becomes expected. What stands out today becomes baseline tomorrow. This is hedonic adaptation. Your achievements don't radiate forever. They decay. So when attraction is built on resume value, it fades the moment it's absorbed. What remains is your state. And if that state is quietly anxious, if it needs appreciation to feel stable, desire collapses into neutrality. You've seen this play out. A man sits across from a woman unknowingly conducting an interview. He lists experiences, explains accomplishments, frames himself as a good option. His questions aren't curiosity, they're positioning. He wants confirmation. Meanwhile, she feels like a judge, not a participant, and attraction cannot survive where judgment replaces polarity. There's a dark irony here. The more you try to demonstrate worth, the more you imply it isn't already assumed. Confidence doesn't announce itself, it rests. And when a man is at rest in himself, there's nothing to prove. That absence of need creates space, mystery, gravity. But a man running a checklist collapses that space. He fills silence, explains himself, signals investment too early. Not because he's weak, but because he believes attraction must be earned. This is why the men who did everything right feel the most betrayed. They followed instructions, played fair, worked hard, and still nothing ignites, because attraction was never a reward system. It's a perception system, and perception doesn't care how hard you tried. It only cares about what you are in the moment. At some point, a man must abandon the checklist, not his ambition, not his standards, but the belief that external markers create internal authority, because the real evaluation happens long before your story is told. In the first glance, the first pause, the first silence. And what's being assessed there has nothing to do with effort. It's something far more primitive, far more honest, and impossible to fake for long. In the next chapter, we'll expose what women are actually scanning for in those first seconds. The silent test that decides whether desire even has a chance to form. Before you finish your first sentence, the decision has already begun. Not consciously, not logically, but it has begun. When a woman meets you, she isn't asking the questions you think she is. She's not wondering what you do for work. She's not calculating your potential. She's not ranking your accomplishments. She's scanning for something far more ancient. Her nervous system is asking, is this man safe in himself? Is he grounded or reaching? Is he present or performing? This scan happens in seconds, and once it's complete, everything else is filtered through it. You can say all the right things and still communicate insecurity. You can stay silent and still project authority, because words are optional. State is not. Let's talk carefully here. This isn't about labeling people or pathologizing behavior. It's about patterns. When a man carries anxious energy, it shows up as over-explaining, seeking reassurance, filling silence, subtle approval checking. When a man carries avoidant energy, it shows up as emotional distance, withholding presence, controlled detachment. But there's a third state most men never reach: secure presence, calm, open, unattached to outcome. And this is where attraction breathes. Imagine this. Two men say the same words. I enjoy spending time with you. The first says it leaning forward, searching her face. His tone carries a question mark. The second says it calmly, almost casually. No urgency, no need for response. Same sentence. Opposite effect, because one is asking to be chosen, the other is simply expressing truth. Women don't respond to words. They respond to where the words come from. Charisma is often misunderstood. It's not volume, not charm, not cleverness. It's congruence. When your inner state matches your outer expression, there's no friction, no performance, no strain. And that coherence feels rare. Most people are split, wanting one thing, projecting another. So when someone is internally aligned, it stands out like silence in a noisy room. The cost of incongruence. Here's where many successful men get trapped. They've built a strong outer identity, but their inner state never caught up. So they project confidence while feeling uncertain. They signal abundance while needing validation. That mismatch creates discomfort, not conscious discomfort, somatic discomfort, and attraction quietly withdraws, not because she judged you, but because her body didn't relax around you. Desire doesn't grow in certainty, it grows in tension, and tension is where most men disappear. Attraction is not a conscious choice, it's a neurological process. The brain bonds through contrast. Presence followed by absence, warmth followed by distance, certainty interrupted by mystery. This is not romance, it's chemistry. And when that pattern appears, something dangerous happens. The mind leans in. Intermittent reinforcement, carefully explained. There's a psychological mechanism called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle behind slot machines. Unpredictable rewards create stronger attachment than consistent ones. But let's be clear, this is not about manipulation. It's about understanding why emotional unpredictability can become addictive. The men women obsess over aren't calculating reinforcement schedules. They're simply not emotionally available on demand. They're present when present, absent when absent. And that unpredictability creates pull. Why neediness kills tension. A man who is always available, always agreeable, always invested, removes contrast. There's no uncertainty, no edge, no emotional friction. Everything is known. And what is known becomes safe, but flat. Safety without polarity leads to comfort. Comfort without tension leads to indifference. The studio apartment myth, you've seen this before. The man with little to offer on paper, but who isn't trying to offer anything. He's not chasing connection. He's allowing it. He enjoys the moment, then returns to his life. That absence isn't strategic. It's natural. He doesn't hover. He doesn't linger emotionally. And that creates space. Space is where curiosity grows. Why curiosity turns into attachment. When a woman can't predict your emotional availability, her mind fills the gaps. She wonders. She replays interactions. She seeks resolution. Not because you're withholding, but because you're not oriented around her reaction. That orientation matters more than any tactic. The line between power and poison. Here's the ethical line. Manipulation is creating volatility to control. Presence is being whole enough to not chase. One is calculated, the other is embodied. The difference is intent. The men who become addictive don't create chaos. They create contrast simply by being internally complete. Why romance movies get this wrong. Romance often teaches men to pursue endlessly, to prove love through consistency. But desire doesn't obey romantic scripts. It responds to polarity. Grounded masculine presence meeting receptive feminine curiosity. Remove either, and the spark dies. The misclassification trap. This is where many good men lose. They become safe, predictable, emotionally available before attraction has formed. They get categorized as warm. but non-threatening, trusted, but not desired. And once placed there, climbing out is almost impossible. Unless the internal state changes. Not behavior, not strategy, state. And that brings us to the silent killer of attraction, the one hiding beneath success, politeness, and effort, approval hunger. That's next. The fastest way to lose desire is to need it, and most men never realize they're leaking approval until attraction is already gone. The hunger beneath the surface. Approval hunger doesn't look desperate. It looks reasonable, polite, attentive, emotionally available. It hides behind success, manners, and good intentions. But beneath it lives a silent question. Am I enough yet? And that question bleeds into everything. The covert contract men don't know they're making. Here's the psychological trap. Many men unconsciously form what's called a covert contract. It goes like this. If I'm competent, respectful, stable, and consistent, then she should desire me. But desire doesn't respond to fairness. It responds to polarity. And covert contracts poison polarity because they turn connection into obligation. How approval leaks in real time. You don't have to say anything wrong. Approval, hunger shows up in micro movements. Explaining yourself when no explanation is needed, softening your opinions to avoid friction, laughing slightly too quickly, checking her reactions, mid-sentence, adjusting your energy to keep her comfortable. None of this is wrong, but all of it communicates one thing. Her response matters more than my center, and the moment that message lands, attraction shifts. Why success makes this worse? Ironically, successful men are often the most approval dependent. They've trained themselves to chase metrics, promotion, praise, results. So when they enter dating, they bring the same mindset. They try to win affection, but affection isn't a scoreboard. And when success becomes a substitute for self-worth, approval becomes oxygen. The successful beggar. This is the quiet tragedy. A man with everything begging emotionally. Not with words, with posture, with tone, with anticipation. He offers value while silently asking, "Do you see me?" Women feel this immediately, and once felt, desire collapses. Not because he's unworthy, but because he's asking to be lifted. Why self-validation changes everything. The men who create attraction operate from a different place. They validate themselves first, not arrogantly, quietly. They enjoy approval, but don't feed on it. They hear praise, but don't anchor to it. They receive rejection, but don't collapse. This emotional independence is rare, and rarity creates value. The moment power returns. There's a shift that happens when approval no longer runs your nervous system. You slow down, you speak less, you listen without agenda. You're no longer trying to secure connection. You're allowing it or letting it go. And paradoxically, this detachment increases pull, because now interaction is a choice, not a need. The line most men are afraid to cross. To release approval hunger, you must be willing to disappoint, to say no, to hold your ground, to let someone walk away without chasing. Most men can't do this because they confuse peace with abandonment. But the men who can enter a different category, not because they withdraw, but because they remain centered even when something is at stake, and that center is magnetic. What approval hunger blocks? As long as you're seeking validation, you can't access the next layer: presence, stillness, authority, the qualities that don't chase attraction, but command attention. And that's where we're going next. Because once approval is gone, something else takes its place: self-possession. And that changes everything. What approval hunger blocks? There is a moment when a man stops reaching, and everything changes. Not outside, inside. What approval hunger blocks. What self-possession actually is. Self-possession is not dominance, not aloofness, not emotional coldness. It is the ability to remain internally steady regardless of outcome. You don't lean forward emotionally. You don't pull away defensively. You stay calm, present, whole. This state is rare because it cannot be faked under pressure. Why calm feels powerful? Most men confuse intensity with attraction. They think passion is loud, urgent, charged. But real polarity is quiet. A man who is self-possessed doesn't rush conversation. He doesn't fill silence. He doesn't chase emotional resolution. His presence feels grounded, like standing near a still lake instead of crashing waves. And that calm creates contrast. The moment he says no, there's a moment every woman remembers, not when a man agrees, not when he pursues, but when he declines. Without bitterness, he doesn't justify, he doesn't punish, he simply chooses differently. That moment reorders perception, because it signals abundance without performance. Why non-reactivity changes the frame. Self-possession shows up most clearly when tested, when she pulls back, when she challenges, when she becomes inconsistent. A reactive man tightens, he analyzes, he adjusts. A self-possessed man remains unchanged, not because he doesn't care, but because his identity isn't threatened. This non-reactivity creates mystery, and mystery pulls attention inward, presence without agenda. Here's the paradox. The more you want a specific outcome, the less present you become. Your attention leaves the moment and rushes into the future. Self-possession reverses that. You listen without waiting. You speak without managing reaction. You enjoy interaction without needing it to continue. This creates depth, not excitement. Depth. And depth is what lingers. Why this can't be learned as a technique. You cannot act self-possessed, because the body knows, under silence, under touch, under emotional pressure. Your nervous system reveals the truth. That's why this state is built, not performed, through solitude, through self-trust, through a life that feels full without witnesses. The shift from attraction to gravity. Attraction is reactive. Gravity is constant. Men chasing attraction adjust themselves endlessly. Men with self-possession create gravity. People move toward them without understanding why. Not because they demand it, but because they don't need it. What comes after self-possession? Once you are no longer seeking validation, no longer reactive, no longer performing, a deeper peace emerges, and with it, a different kind of power, one that doesn't spike or crash, one that cannot be taken away, internal peace. And that peace does something unexpected. It makes you magnetic without effort. That's where we're going next. What comes after self-possession? The moment you stop needing attraction is the moment it starts finding you, the illusion of more. Most men believe the answer is addition, more discipline, more optimization, more edge. But the transformation that changes everything is subtractive. Less proving, less chasing, less identity built on reaction. The man who doesn't need attraction hasn't given up. He's simplified. Audit the hidden motivations. Here's where the real work begins. Look closely at what you pursue. Ask yourself, without lying, am I doing this because it feels true to me, or because I want to be seen a certain way? This isn't about quitting ambition, it's about removing the bargain. When success is expression, it strengthens you. When success is compensation, it weakens you. Building self-validation from the inside out. Self-validation isn't arrogance, it's stability. It means your worth doesn't spike with praise or collapse with silence. You like who you are when no one is watching. That requires time alone. Stillness, discomfort without distraction. Most men avoid this because solitude reveals what performance hides. But that confrontation is what creates depth. Presence as a daily practice. Presence isn't mystical, it's practical. Slower speech, fewer explanations, comfortable pauses, eye contact that isn't searching. These are not tricks, they're the natural byproduct of a regulated nervous system. And regulation comes from not tying your emotional state to outcomes. Detachment without disconnection. There's a misconception that detachment means coldness. It doesn't. Detachment means your well-being is not hostage to response. You can care deeply without clinging. You can enjoy intimacy without fear of loss. This is what allows love without dependency. And dependency is the opposite of desire. Why this changes every interaction. When you no longer need attraction, you listen instead of leaning. You choose instead of hoping. You speak truth without softening it. You stop managing perception. And paradoxically, perception improves because authenticity always outranks strategy. Redefining success. At this stage, success is no longer about being wanted. It's about being at home in yourself. Relationships become additions, not anchors, and the women who respond to this version of you respond differently. With curiosity, with investment, with depth. Not because you're chasing them, but because you're standing still. The final question. Can you walk away without resentment? Can you remain calm without certainty? Can you enjoy connection without possession? If yes, you've crossed the line most men never do. And what waits on the other side
In the
isn't
stillness of the
loneliness,
moment,
it's freedom.
we find the truth
And that freedom
eludes
leads to the
hurried
final
mind.
truth. The one that reframes everything you thought attraction was for. Not to be wanted, but to become whole. That's where we end. The final question. Can you walk away without resentment? Can you remain calm without certainty? Can you enjoy connection without possession? If yes, you've crossed the line most men never do. And what waits on the other side isn't loneliness, it's freedom. And that freedom leads to the final truth. The one that reframes everything you thought attraction was for. Not to be wanted, but to become whole. That's where we end. When understanding turns dangerous. Once a man understands attraction at this level, a temptation appears. To use it, to pull levers, to withhold intentionally, to manufacture uncertainty. This is where many go wrong, because the line between embodiment and manipulation is thin, but absolute. The difference most men miss. Manipulation comes from lack. It is strategy born from fear, fear of loss, fear of invisibility, fear of being ordinary. Embodiment comes from abundance. It is calm without calculation, distance without punishment, presence without agenda. Both may look similar on the surface, but only one is clean. Why poison always backfires? Manipulation creates short-term pull and long-term decay. It breeds mistrust, resentment, emotional instability, and worse, it corrodes the man using it, because every tactic reinforces the belief, I am not enough without control. That belief destroys self-possession from the inside. The two paths. Picture two men who learn the same psychology. The first becomes colder, sharper, more withholding. He confuses non-reactivity with detachment. He attracts attention, but repels intimacy. The second becomes clearer, more grounded, more honest. He doesn't chase, but he doesn't hide. He attracts less chaos and more depth. same knowledge, different outcome. Respect is the foundation. True masculine presence does not dominate, it stabilizes. It creates safety without submission, desire without pressure, and it respects autonomy. Women are not prizes to win, they are people who respond to alignment. When alignment is real, attraction is mutual, more honest. He doesn't chase, but he doesn't hide. He attracts less chaos and more depth. Same knowledge, different outcome. The final reframe. Attraction was never the goal. It was the signal, a signal that your inner world is coherent, that your nervous system is regulated, that your identity is not for sale. When those conditions are met, attraction appears naturally, not as obsession, but as resonance. The quiet ending. The rarest man in the modern world is not the richest, not the strongest, not the most desired. It is the man who is at peace with himself, who does not bargain for worth, who does not chase completion through others. And, ironically, that man becomes magnetic because he possesses the one thing no one can fake: inner stillness.